Hey everyone, it's your average chess player here. Today we are going to look at this endgame position. It is white's turn to play and the board is facing this way. Feel free to pause the video here and try to find the best winning continuation for white. Please don't stop at just the first move. Try to find at least the next two moves because they are really important for you to win this position. So go ahead and pause the video and try to find the solution. Feel free to skip ahead to the solution part of the video if you just want to verify your solution or you just want the solution and nothing else. I'll leave the timestamps in the description and we will start solving this position. So we have an interesting choice right off the bat, which is, do we exchange this bishop for this knight? And is that endgame better for us? So that is kind of the first choice we have to make. We have other candidate moves like a4, h3, king e2, king e3 loses to knight c4 with a fork, and then black gets another pawn. So we're not going to consider that. But a4, king e2, h3, maybe bishop f4, among other candidate moves. But I would want to consider bishop takes e5 first. And the reason I want to consider that is I also want to look at this position from black's perspective. If given a move, what will black play? Black would want to play a move like knight c4, attacking this pawn, and after white plays a4, let me put this on the board with like a token move like h3, knight c4, and knight b6, forking these two pawns, and after a5, knight takes d5, black is up a pawn, and not just that. These two are connected pass pawns, and black will push those pawns, and this bishop will be overwhelmed with that. Black can now gobble up these two pawns, or in the worst case, exchange one of the his own pawn for these two pawns and focus all his activity in the center with the d and c pawns and try to queen. So black is in a kind of a winning position, you could say, because he's a pawn up and his pawn structure is definitely helping him in this endgame. Just because of that reason of how active the knight will be, my first move here, which I considered and I would want to stick with, is just taking the knight. Well, of course, in an over the board game, we might hesitate to do this. So that's why we need to see through the winning continuation if there is one, and figure out like at least until a point where we feel like, oh, this is winning, I need to just play this move. So this endgame, let's assess it quickly before we head into candidate moves again. The king side, the pawns are symmetrical, so they're gonna result in a closed structure eventually, or some kind of a blockade where I could, like, play g, like let's say like g4, h6, h4, something like this can happen, or something like this can happen if at all, and the side will be just locked down. So this is good in a way because you don't really have to push the pawns and not worry about that side much unless it's unless needed. And this could also lead to drawish endgames if all these pawns disappear outside the board, like outside of this board. So what are the candidate moves do we have here? King e3 is one, with the idea of making the king active and also kind of coming to e4, because in this position king d6 is a threat. Black would want to play king d6 and capture this pawn because this pawn is loose, right? So king e3, even king f3, I don't think it makes much of a difference. It's definitely a move that we need to consider because it's also a more of a natural move. Like I said, moving these pawns on the king side might not really lead to anything because black might just mirror you and try to put you in your kind of a zugzwang, or even like make you make commitments in the position and move your own pawns and kings and put you in a losing position. So after king e3, king f3, the only other move that we have is because of the imbalance we have on the queen side. So on the queen side, we have these two pawns against one pawn. It's like a 2v1 situation. And in the center, we have like these two pawns which black can push and kind of deviate our king from doing other things. But white does have this majority on the queen side, right? And this is a majority we can try to mobilize and distract the black king uh, to protect against this threat and maybe capture these pawns and queen this pawn. So this is something we need to think about. So king e3, f3, a4. I mean, I'm going to just say king e3 and f3 are the same. These are the only candidate moves that I would consider because of how the position is. So let's look at king e3 because that's what I considered first, because I was really concerned with this threat on king d6 attacking the d5 pawn. After king e4, this is when I realized that, oh, I can only protect the pawn from this square, and if I have to move away from e4, this pawn falls. And playing from black's perspective, this is exactly what I can achieve by a move like c4. Now, since I cannot move my king even to d4 or d3, because the pawns are preventing me, but also I cannot go anywhere else because d5 will fall for free. Let's say I play a token move like a4 just to start mobilizing my own pawns as like the plan that we discussed, and then c3, threatening to queen further, and then I have to now come back to d3, forced to do this, and takes. Here black can play this nice move of king c5, restricting the mobility of the white king by preventing the king from going to b4 himself, and also like wants to take control of b6 in case white tries to do some shenanigans with a5 b6 and trying to run away with the pawn. Here the problem is whatever you play, let's say you play h3, black plays e4, starting to mobilize his own pawn, trying to distract the king, and you play g4 with the hopes of, hey, I'll play h5, g5, h5, and try to make some counterplay, but all that can be shut down with just g5. And now white is actually in a zugzwang. White has to commit to some move. You can go here, you can go here. If you play king b3, black can simply play e3, not king d4, because after a5, e3, kings, something like this, black is supposed to give up this pawn because these pawns are kind of advanced and the black king is away from these pawns and has to go to c5 to catch up to this, because after takes, this position is kind of a draw because the structure is locked, and this is a theoretically drawn position with best play. It's a draw. So e3 is the only winning move, and once white king goes there, after king b4, takes, the a pawn will queen first, and then no matter, even if white captures these two pawns, the black queen will be active to checkmate you. So king e3 does not work. So which leaves us with the move that the other candidate move we saw, which was a4, because of the imbalance we have on the queen side. Now, how does this address king d6 is what we need to see. The advantage of playing a4 first is the fact that you can now play a5. And if black plays something like king takes d5, what is our plan here? Because if we play b6 and try to go forward with it, AB king c6, and the black king catches up to this pawn and can now queen one of these two pawns. There's nothing much white can do. But the idea here is a different kind of a pawn breakthrough. We have to break through with these pawns, but it's not with b6, but we have to break through with a6. And the main reason we choose the a pawn here, at least from why I would choose it, is the fact that if I indeed play b6, this a pawn, if you draw like a square from this pawn, like along its diagonal, this king is outside that square. So as long as the king is on the d file for any reason at all, we can queen the a pawn. And that's pretty much the idea. So a6, what can black play? Black has to probably step back and try to cover up these squares, but I can play b6 anyway. And now if you play ab, the king is already outside these diagonal square, so I can play a7 and the king is definitely out of reach. If you play king c6, not b7, it might be still winning, but just b takes a7. I can queen. This pawn is taking away the b7 square. This pawn is taking away the b8 square, and you can't do anything. Even if you play king d7, I can take here. and again I'm going to queen. So there's nothing much you can do. That's what I'm trying to say. And once I queen, I clean up your position, I win. So let's go back. Let's go back. This is a winning line. Now we need to see if there are any other moves that also win for white. Like we'll see just a couple of defenses and then we will say this is a winning continuation, right? King d5 doesn't work. What if I do a move like king c7 first? What happens here? Let's say a6. And then if you play something like king b6, let's say, what will you do? Black is threatening to take the pawn on b5, and then the pawn on a6, and then there'll be 3 pawns. You can't really do much with it. But white has this pawn in the center, right? I can play the move d6. And it's a nice attraction tactic, you could say. With d6, now you're just like how black was going to eventually push these pawns and kind of distract the white king, we are doing the same thing. Now, if you play king b5, d7, and I queen, and no matter how many pawns you have, I'm gonna just clean them all up and win this endgame. And if you can't go here, you can't go here, you can't go here, so you kind of stuck. Let's say you play like a move like c4, and I play d7, and you play king c7. Now I can actually play b6 again. Because if you take here, I take there and I queen. And if you take here, I can play a7. And then if you take here, I queen here. And if you come to this pawn, I queen there. It's crazy. And if you play king b6, I queen here. So this is a nice attraction tactic, you could say. And if you play any other move, like let's say c4 here, instead of king b6, I can play d6 anyway. Like I said, as soon as the king lands on the d file, it's outside the square of this pawn, and you take, I play b6, takes, and a7. Crazy endgame, crazy endgame. Just one more variation, I swear. c4. This is black is kind of threatening to come this way, right? But we play a6 again. c3. Now the black is threatening to queen his own pawn, and we have to now step into the square so that we can catch up to the pawn, not play b6 immediately, so that we can protect this. Now king c5 with the idea of taking this pawn, but we know what happens once black goes after our pawn. We already saw in the other variation, which is just d6. Now if you take, b6 takes, a7, and even if black plays c2, we just come back. Whatever you do, queens, and I can catch up to this pawn, and then eventually this pawn will fall. What an endgame. What an endgame. I thoroughly loved it because it makes, this position made you make a choice right at the start, and then you need to see through to some winning lines in order to commit to making this move. So if you skip to this part of the video, I'll give you the solution. The winning move here was, the winning move of the continuation we have was bishop takes e5, because the knight was too active. It could jump to c4 and b6 and capture these pawns, and white would have been down a pawn with a losing position. After d5, we played the move, which is the second move, a4. King e3 was losing to this continuation where white was in a zugzwang and would be forced to give up the d5 pawn, and then forced to give up these 2 pawns as well. And black can just force white to do it. So king e3 was losing. a4 is the winning move, because after king d6, a5, black, no matter what black does, we're going to play a move a6, getting a pawn breakthrough through b6. And after ab, and we saw the sample variation, after king d6, b6 takes a7, we queen. And if black tries to be smart and play something like, after b6 tries to play something like king c6, we won't play b7, but we'll take b takes a7, because the b7 square is taken away by this pawn, and we're going to queen. We have this nice little barrier going around here. That's the end game. I hope you guys liked this video, and if you liked it, leave a like on the video. If you like content like this, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.